What are we doing in the black community? The number one consumer of a Mercedes-Benz
Who's us?
us. The number one consumer of a Gucci and a Louis Vuitton, us. And they don't even advertise. Why is it that in the black community, we are always the number one consumer, but we're not the number one creators?
So you just said it, the fact that there's consumers and creators. For so long, we assume success based on consumption.
Welcome to Closing the Gap Podcast, the truth about black wealth. I am your co-host, Mr. Eddie Richardson, here with our host and the owner of Hamilton Wealth Advisors, Mr. Wilbert Hamilton. How you doing today, brother?
Hey, blessed and highly favored.
Yes, indeed. That's great to hear. And you are tuned in to another righteous and holy episode of the Closing the Gap Podcast, the truth about black wealth. And our title for this one is, This is Chess, Not Checkers.
Yes, sir.
You know, we like to use the game analogy for this episode. We know that your life and your money is not a game, but the truth of the matter is, Wilbur, that, you know, chess has a lot of interesting parallels to our life, parallels to our financial strategies, our financial plan, and also spiritually as well. Mm-hmm. So we're not trying to play a game with your life nor your finances, but we do want to parallel chess to what we're going through now, because honestly, we're not playing a game, but there are some in this world, in this United States, that are playing us for a game, if we're honest about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so there are various pieces, and there are some people that feel that they are kings in this thing, and they want to treat everybody like a pawn. And we don't want to be just pawns in this life, in this world, but we want to be able to utilize the gifts and the talents and the resources that God has given each one of us to be able to move us forward, to be able to win in this lifetime and in this life that God has already given us.
Absolutely. You know, ironically, when we look at the world, the way things are going right now, you know, especially in the United States, the news that we've had over the past few days, and it looks like a queen that was supposed to be supporting her king has decided to change course and decided she wanted to be a king herself. So, you know, it's always ironic and kind of funny because, like I say, you know, life always, you know, comes back at you in a myriad of ways. And like I said, there are a lot of parallels. And, you know, the biggest thing we can do is arm and equip ourselves on how to best play the game of life.
Yeah.
And the best thing about, you know, the game that we're playing in this game of life is that, you know, we got a book that we can turn to that has all the answers.
That's right.
So, you know, if nothing else, it's nothing like taking an open book test, you know, but the biggest thing about the open book test is you got to read that book.
Yeah.
And if you fail to open up that book and you fail to read that book, then you never have the actual answers to the test. So, you know, first and foremost, we want to remind all of you to make sure that you're opening up that Bible, making sure you're getting into that word, making sure you're diving into, you know, that scripture, because the question that you all have and that we all have in any area of life, you won't necessarily get the exact answer that you're looking for from that book. But I promise you, if you go into that book, it's going to point you into the right direction to receive the answer to the question that you have. So, you know, that's where I think a lot of us tend to kind of, you know, fall off the wagon, is that, you know, we live in this microwave society where we want the answer right now. We want to open up the Bible and read the scripture and they want it to jump off the page and all of a sudden the problem solved. And it don't work that way. Yeah. You know, we got to do some research. We got to do some digging. We got to do some, you know, we got to do a research paper. Yeah. We got to sit down. We got to take some notes. We got to meditate. We got to pray. We got to, you know, take our time and digest that word and spend some time with God to make sure that we're receiving the right information so we can actually utilize it to best put ourselves in a position where we can, you know, best win at the game of life.
Yeah, that's true, Wilbert, because the Bible is the ultimate playbook. The Bible is contains the ultimate rules for every aspect of our lives. And so that's why it's so important that, you know, what we do here, and I appreciate you and from the financial side and bringing me on to provide some of that spiritual insight to the people, because there is no aspect of our lives that God is not involved in.
Absolutely.
And while, you know, when we are going through some various struggles and challenges of life, especially financially, sometimes we may cry out and say, okay, God, why me? Why are you allowing this to happen to me? And then that's on a personal level. But then on a collective level, when we talked about telling the truth about black wealth here on this show, as black people, we oftentimes will cry out and say, okay, Lord, why does it seem as though we are the most oppressed? We are the ones that are forgotten about, so to speak, and we don't have as much as the wealth as some others may have. And as a result of that, we may get into the blame game and start to point the finger at God and say, okay, God, why should I even believe in you when I don't have what others have? But scripture tells us, fret not over what evildoers do. And a lot of things are ill-gotten gains. That's what we have to be honest about in this world, that in this society that we live in. Everything that has been acquired by some that we see has not been done in an honest way. Now, I'm not trying to indict, nor are we trying to indict anybody, but the truth about black wealth is that many people have gotten their wealth off the backs of us.
Absolutely.
Right? They have we constantly are working, and they are gaining more from us than we are able to gain for ourselves. And so in that, I don't want anybody to feel like God does not see you, God does not hear you, but actually this is the time that we need to cry out to God even more, is in times like this, because these are the times that God is always present.
Absolutely.
But these are the times that you are able to get an intimate relationship with God and be able to really see and hear from God, is in times of challenge, in times of struggle. Wilbert, as you said, sometimes scripture doesn't necessarily jump out at you, but if we take the time to read the Bible, we will see the various stories of how God's people were in tight situations where there was war and famine and pestilence in the land, but then the people decided to turn and call out to God. And when we turn and we call out to God, then God will end up leading and guiding us to the prosperity and to the abundant life that he already has prepared for us. Because most times we fail to have the prosperity, we fail to have the abundance, is because we are not following his plan. We are not following God's will. And that's what we have been striving to do here at Closing the Gap Podcast. Is this year we have been constantly telling you, put a plan together, sit down, talk to a professional like Mr. Hamilton about your finances, get into a good church congregation with somebody that has a good relationship with God, that can pray with you, that can study with you, that can walk through these challenges of life and through the victories of life with you. You need professional help. You cannot do every single thing on your own. You need professional help. Now, I'm gonna share a story if I can, Will, if you don't mind. And as I share this story, and if the brother listens, I'm sure he'll be able to recollect, recall our conversation. But I was talking to a guy this weekend that's a professional in a particular field of study, and we were talking about finances, and he said, like, hey, what do you do for your finance? He didn't know that I had to, that I'm on the podcast with you. He didn't know anything about Closing the Gap or anything like that. But just so happens, based on our relationship, we end up having a conversation. And I shared with him, I said, hey, man, it's perfect. Got a podcast, got a good friend to do that, do the podcast with, Mr. Hamilton. He's a wealth advisor. And he began to share me some of the reasons that he has not put his finances in, he has not seen a financial planner. And then when I shared with him that, I said, hey, I said, one episode, Wilbert and I talked about making sure that you see a professional in a field. And I said, now, you are a professional in your field. You're great at the work that you do, because he is. He's excellent at the work that he does. And I said, we have to come to you to get the necessary information and advice that we need in the field that you work in.
Correct.
And I said, so you need to do the same thing. Go to a professional, get the help that you need. And so we want to employ everybody that every professional provides a plan, right? And why do we provide plans, and why are we talking about plans all this year? And even this episode, we're saying this is chess and not checkers, is that, first of all, when God created the heavens and the earth, God did it with a plan. All right. Then every professional became a professional in their field because they had a plan that they had to follow and fulfill in order to get the certifications to say that I am a professional in XYZ field. Right. And that's the same thing that chess is. Chess is a plan, and chess has rules and guidelines for every piece on the chess board. And so chess is a plan. And so while we're saying today that this life, this financial plan in your life is chess and not checkers, is because you have to lay out the plan for your life, for your spiritual life, for your finances. And in order to do so, you need to talk to a professional. If somebody wants to learn how to play chess, or they learn how to play chess, right? If they know how to play chess, or they want to learn how to play chess, guess what? They need to talk to a professional or somebody that understands the game, so that they can know how to make the necessary moves in the game. And so that's what we want to do today, is we want to relate the chess game to your spiritual life, the chess game to your financial life. And then we want you to take this and then utilize it in whatever other aspect that you need to put a plan together for your life, because we want you to prosper and to be in good health. And good health is not just financially.
Yes.
Good health is not just physically, right? But it's spiritual. It's the whole aspect of a person. We want you to prosper in your life.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. So we want to make sure that we're, first and foremost, seeking after him.
Yeah.
I think that's where everything starts. So, whether you want to be good spiritually, mentally, emotionally, financially, physically, whatever you want to be good at, the first step is seeking after him. Yeah. Because if you seek after him, he's going to order your steps. And ordering those steps is going to push you in the right direction of that professional that you need.
Yeah.
So, when people usually don't seek a professional, it's because they have trust issues. And it's because they have questions about what they're going to hear, what they're going to receive, and their lack of confidence in the people that they may come across. But guess what? If you go to God first and let him order your steps, he's going to put the necessary pieces in front of you that's going to be credible, that's going to be educated, that's going to be able to give you the professional advice so you can be the best you can possibly be in whatever area you actually need help in. And we all need help in a certain area.
That's fair.
None of us are perfect people. We all need help in these various degrees, different areas. And guess what? We need more help at different times based on what we're going through in life.
Correct.
And even if you don't need a full scale, revamp, everybody needs a little bit of motivation every now and then.
Yeah.
Everybody needs a little bit of
push,
accountability, that push that a coach and a teacher and a professional provides at a certain point in time. Michael Jordan had a coach.
Yeah.
LeBron James got a coach. Kobe Bryant had a coach.
Yeah.
Magic Johnson had a coach. All these people had coaches. And these were the best of the best in their particular professions.
Correct.
So people who have been the best and the best to ever live in their profession still needed a coach, needed a trainer, needed a dietitian, needed the nutritionist, needed a financial advisor, needed an attorney, needed a CPA. If people who have been the best of the best in their particular areas of life. But in order for them to be better in other areas of life, they had to go get professional help. So the biggest thing that I want us to understand, especially for my men out there, because, it's always harder for us for whatever reason, because, we don't like asking for help. We want to always seem like we got it all together. Then guess what? Nobody has it all together all the time. There are points in my life where I feel like, man, I'm doing pretty good, and ain't too much help I need right now. I got it. I'm cooking with like fish grease right now. I'm hot. I got it going on. But guess what?
Let him cook.
That is the time where I still need the Lord the most, because I need to remember how I got it, how I got cooking, because I didn't get cooking on my own.
That's right.
I got cooking when I was on my knees. I got cooking when I was talking to him. I got cooking when I was when I was struggling, when I was trying to figure out what was going on, when I didn't know left or right, when I didn't see the forest for the trees. But he made a way out of no way, and it put me in a position where I feel like now I'm cooking. And I'm thankful that he gave me that opportunity, but I'm more thankful at the journey, because it's taught me so much more, like I said, about myself and also about how God works. He allowed me to struggle a little bit, because he said, you know what, you want to go and do your way. You want to think you the professional at everything. And I've been telling you, until you humble yourself and come to me and seek ye first, then all those things will be added unto you. But I had to seek him first. So to my men out there, we all got to humble ourselves, whether it's fixing your family, fixing your finances, fixing your health, whatever it may be. We have to come to Jesus first and foremost and have that meeting and look ourselves in the mirror and say, what can I do better? How can I be better? And once we do that, then we can take the next step. Then we can take the next 2 steps. Then we can take the next 3 steps. And then guess what? Every now and then you're going to get knocked back a step. But it's okay, because God is with you. And you're going to know that, because guess what? You're going to be reinforcing yourself with that strength, with that plan of action that God is going to help you put together. Because like I said, every profession you go to, they're going to start with their plan. And even when I'm seeking professional counsel from a spiritual perspective, what they still tell me what I had to do. Well, you got to have a plan. What's your routine for your spiritual development? Are you in Bible study? How often are you reading the word? How often are you praying? I still had to develop a plan. And now I have a plan. When I wake up in the morning, that alarm goes off to wake me up. The next alarm is to jump into devotional. At 12 o'clock noon, I get another ding on the phone. Hey, midday prayer. 9 p.m., I get another ding on the phone. Late night come to Jesus meeting. Let's talk about the day. Let's unpack what's going on. So I still have a plan that helps me try and stay centered and focused on what the most important thing is. And the most important thing is always the relationship with God. When, regardless of whatever's going on in life, how chaotic and crazy this life can be, we've seen a lot of things happen in this 2025 so far. We saw a new administration come in office. We saw him come in office with, someone who seemed like was his best friend, and they were working hand in hand. And now all of a sudden, those people that walked in working hand in hand are now at odds. And guess what? That king and that queen that was working together seamlessly, now all of a sudden is working against each other. And guess who they're trying to use as the pawns in the story? Us. But guess what? If you don't get your plan together for yourself and your life, you will be a pawn in this game that United States of America is playing with you and with us, and always has been. But in order to move yourself from being a pawn to being the queen, to at one point in time, sooner or later being a king, you got to have a plan to orchestrate and order your steps. And we'll be right back after this commercial break.
Yes, indeed. Welcome back to Closing the Gap Podcast, Truth About Black Wealth. Once again, I am your co-host, Mr. Eddie Richardson, here with our host and the owner of Hamilton Wealth Advisors, Mr. Wilbert Hamilton. And you can find us anywhere that you stream your podcast, whether it be YouTube. You can find us on YouTube at Closing the Gap, The Truth. You can also find us on Spotify, Apple Music, anywhere else that you get your audio podcast at Closing the Gap, The Truth About Black Wealth. So we've been talking about, title of this episode is This is Chess, Not Checkers, right? And we're dealing with, first and foremost, we talked about how we need to get anchored in God. And you brought up the scripture of Matthew chapter 6 and 33 that says, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and then all these other things will be added unto you. And so we want everybody to remember that. Seek God first. Then all the other things will be added unto you, right? Seek God and his kingdom first. Then you'll be able to get the guidance, the information that you need to do everything else. So this episode is chess and not checkers. So let's set the scene a little bit. Let's dive in a little further with the analogy. As you stated, we've been, the United States. We started out the year, we had the king and the queen, you know what I'm saying? It looked like they were working together to try to eliminate all the pawns. And then now the queen, however we want to call the other guy, king or the queen, whichever one he fits in the mold of, now he is jumped off the board, all right? And he wants to create his own board, I would even say.
Yes.
And so, but with them doing that is even should inform our listeners as it is with us that you can't base your life and your plan off of the president and whoever else gets in the cabinet of the president, right?
Absolutely.
That's why we began this show talking about God, and we always talking about anchoring yourself in God. That's why Matthew 6 and 33 is so important. Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven. Seek him first. Then all these other things be added onto you. You have to have a solid base for anything that you do when you get ready to create your plan. So if you look to them, then guess what? They'll break up, right? Like they've done. That whole plan has been scrapped, and now both of them are trying to run a different plan and a play. But you need to have your chessboard being anchored in and being laid out in the Word of God. So let's go into it, Will. But I don't want to get too far into that a little bit. But just setting that scene for our audience to understand why we are talking about what we're talking about.
Yeah, so of course, we always talk about, like I said, the title, of course, chess, not checkers. And, we all know, even if we're not, major chess players, we do know that chess is a thinking man's game. It is a game of critical thinking. It's a game of, thinking multiple steps ahead. It's a game of order. It's a game of planning and preparation. So that's one of the things that intrigues me about the game, even though I'm not an avid chess player. I have an appreciation for it because I think the critical thinking skills that are necessary to be successful in it are things that parallel into what we need from a life perspective. Is how we need to have a critical thinking approach to the landscape that we're, in front of when we look at this global economy that we have right now. When you can look at the chessboard is the world. It's the global economy that we have in front of us. And we've seen a lot of things take place in this global economy this year. We saw everything from, of course, there was the major talk of tariffs to start the year. Then, of course, we had interest rate adjustments and the talk of continuing to try to lower interest rates. I mean, we have, of course, a new bill that has actually just been signed, not a new bill, a major new bill that has been signed that's going to take, have a major effect on, us and how we operate moving forward and our decision making, when it comes to that and, various social programs that have been cut along with that bill, of course, from Medicaid and, cuts and SNAP benefits and things of that nature. So there's always a lot going on. There's always a number of pieces on the chessboard.
Yeah.
Just like there are a number of pieces moving around in this global economy and in this U.S. economy alone. So understanding how each one of those pieces move and how they affect you is very key to understanding how you're going to make your next move. But like we said a little while ago, you can only make and should only make your next move if you have a plan on how to make the move. Because the one thing that the plan that we talked about and we've been talking about the entire year brings is that regardless of what happens, because we, of course, we plan for the worst and then we're hoping for the best. And having a plan allows us to, when these changes happen and someone else that you're playing against, your competition, you know, makes a move on the board that you weren't prepared for. Now, because you have a plan of action, when things go good or bad, you now know how to react. You now know what the next step should be. You have now planned and prepared. You've done and taken the 6-month emergency reserves and saved the way we've talked about. Because there have been government cutbacks, people losing their jobs, people being laid off work due to some of the closures. And of course, we've had a major, national disaster, out in Texas with the flood that happened from out of nowhere, essentially. And with that, and one of the reasons they're saying, the loss of life was so great was due to the cuts that were made in the funding process by the federal government. So, these are things that we have to understand and have to take account of, and we have to plan and prepare. So we got to make sure that we've taken those 6 months emergency reserves and made a part of our plan. We have to make sure that we've looked at that 401k that we may look at as a pawn right now. You may see that 401k as insignificant if you're 35 and 40 years of age, but if you understand the time value of money, if you understand compound interest, and you understand the meaning of dollar cost average, and you're putting away that $100, that $200, that $300 a month, and over time it continues to grow and build and compound. At some point in time in the future, that piece that you used to think was a pawn, now all of a sudden can turn into your queen. And we have to understand, and that's even more important, the way we look at that now, because if all the benefits that are being cut, what are some of the next benefits that may be cut down the road? Social Security is a benefit that may be cut. That is a piece of income that a lot of people use to survive on a day-to-day basis now. Social Security has become a huge crutch and a huge leg for a lot of people to stand on. So now it's so much more important that you take personal accountability from a planning perspective. And now those small pawns that you see and used to think were insignificant, you now have to take the course of action, making sure that you control your own chessboard. You can build up your pawns and turn them into queens that can take over the game of life for you and now be successful. So if you saved into that 401k and you've done that for years and years and years, that money's compounded, you've had a readjustment and a realignment and a rebalance every now and then. You sat down and reviewed that plan with a professional, and we've done a diagnosis. We ran an analysis on that to see, when do we need to change the investment strategy within this particular 401k? How often do we need to make a change? When should you be making a change? You should be looking and evaluating on an annual basis. You should be looking at possibly making a modification on a quarterly basis. So if we're taking the necessary steps of doing our consistent reviews and analysis, well, guess what? We're never going to get caught off guard because we're always on guard. See, people want to take the, well, Mr. Hamilton, what should I do next? Well, you're telling me that you haven't done the first step, which means you haven't had a conversation. You haven't done any planning to begin with, because people who have done the planning don't have the question of what do I do next, because they already know. See, when I have a plan of action, I have an order of steps. I have an order of operation, and I have step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and this is going to be the culmination of events, and this is what I'm going to get at the end after I've taken all these necessary steps. But if you don't have a plan of action, and you don't know what step 1, step 2, step 3, and step 4 is going to get you, then you need to be back at square one, getting some education and getting an evaluation done so you can develop a plan for your life, so you can develop your own pieces on the chessboard. So now you control the pieces, and you're not being the one that's going to be controlled. Because guess what? in this world, in this economy, in this United States of America, either you're creating your own future or somebody else is creating it for you. Which one do you want to have?
Yeah, that's good. And when we're looking at creating a future, whether we're doing it or, someone else is doing it, we need to understand that in the midst of that creation is God's sovereignty, that God has not left, that God is present. And so in whatever we are doing, whatever we are striving to do to create our plan, Proverbs 16:3 says that we should commit our works to the Lord so that our thoughts can be established. So now we're getting ready to do some work, but as you said, chess is a thinking person's game, right? It's more analytical. You have a plan, but you must think it through, right? Because in the midst of your plan that you have, there's also your opponent that is going to be making some moves. And I think too many times we don't consider the fact that there is an opponent that's playing the game, and we fail to remember that God's sovereignty is still present. And so our minds are too focused on what is happening ancillary outside of our control.
Yes.
That we forget that God is still in control. And so with God being in control, we have to sit down and make sure that we focus on him first when we look at the board, right? It's like, okay, now I see this economic environment. I see this chessboard out here. I see the government policies that are taking place. I see the cutbacks that are taking place. And so now, before I call Mr. Hamilton, I need to call on God. So I call on God so that I get my mind, my spirit right, my thoughts established, as Proverbs 16:3 says, so that now I go into the financial planner's office. I go into the board, the chess game, with a clear understanding of my plan, how I am going to maneuver. Go ahead. Say
You know what? I mean, I'm glad you said that because I want the audience to really hear that. Before you come sit down in my office or any financial advisor's office, go talk to God first. And the reason why is if you don't come in humbly and you haven't asked God for that spirit of discernment, the biggest detriment that we have is that we don't trust the person that we're talking to. And if you don't trust that person, then that person cannot educate you, then that person cannot inform you, then that person cannot help you. So it's utterly important that you have that conversation, because if you don't have that conversation and you walk into my office or any other financial advisor's office and you walk in skeptical, you walk in with your questions, your doubts, you're bringing that negative energy into a place that has no knowledge of you and is strictly there to help you. And if everything that they're bringing to you, you're there to contradict and combat, well, guess what? Who's the professional? You came to my office. I have the degree. I have the certification. I have the experience. I have the access to opportunities. But if you're coming in with a negative mindset, you coming in and you haven't had your own come to Jesus meet, you coming in with your own hostility because you're frustrated and upset with your current situation. Well, guess what? You got in that situation with that attitude. Until you go to the Lord and correct that attitude, then there's nobody that's going to be able to be there to correct you and help you financially. So we got to make sure that we go to God first. And it's just from personal experience what I can tell people, and I always tell people, the biggest detriment to you being successful is you. It's not what anybody else is doing to you. It's your own individual lack of education, and it's due to a lack of trust, not a lack of ignorance, for example, but it's more so a lack of trust, because when you don't have trust, you don't have the ability, or you're not giving someone the ability to educate you properly, because you're not going to digest the information properly if you don't trust the source. So make sure you go to God first and you let him lead you in the direction he would have you to go. And whoever he puts in front of you, take that information. I'm not saying run with the first financial advisor you meet with. You're more than welcome to meet with myself, another one, 2, 3, 4, until you find the one you feel like God has told you to work with. But make sure that God is the one telling you that, and not is you telling you what you want to hear. Because we all have this misconception of we want what we want it, but we want it how we want it. And guess what? God don't work that way.
Yeah.
God works on his time, not our time. And the very thing that is going to save you is usually something that you're not looking for. You know, there's usually things that happen in our lives that, you know, we can all look to as pivotal points or changes or just timely events. And it's never what you thought it was going to be. You know, because we all have this plan in our mind as to how our life is going to play out.
Yeah.
And life never really works out that way. You always say, you want to make God laugh, tell him what your plan for your life is. And he's going to start chuckling because he know what his plan for your life is. And, you know, we have to get out of this mindset of thinking that we're going to be able to control everything, but understand that we just have to humbly submit ourselves to God, let him lead us and guide us, ask him for a spirit of discernment, and then trust who he puts in front of us to allow us to be better people in whatever area we need help in.
Yeah, and that's the truth about Black Wealth is trust, and then we end up building trust when we have confidence in Christ.
Yes.
And that's where our first trust is. We have to trust the one that we don't see in order to trust the ones that we see.
Yes.
Because as you stated, then that's what provides us the discernment that we need to do the things that we need to do. Because too many times we like to navigate the earthly realm with earthly wisdom. And that's why we end up running up against walls, because you need heavenly wisdom to be able to really succeed at this earthly game. You need heavenly wisdom, heavenly guidance to guide you in the decisions you need to make. And that's so key, because as we said, chess is a thinking game. It is a strategy. And if you haven't tested your strategy, you don't have confidence in the strategy, then guess what? You're not going to be able to trust anybody else, right? Because you have not built that confidence in Christ, number one. So now you're not confident in who you are, right? Because you don't understand the work that God is doing within you. Philippians 1:6 says, being confident in this very thing that he has begun a good work in you will perform it until the day of Christ. So what is that saying? It's that when we come into fellowship with the gospel first, when we get in that fellowship, then we gain confidence through our constant fellowship in the word, our constant fellowship with Christ, our constant fellowship with other believers. And through that confidence, then we begin to trust everybody else. We begin to trust the professionals. We begin to trust the people that we have to build relationships with on this chessboard, right? In this economic environment, right? Within our personal financial journey that is dictated by the economic landscape, right? Because we understand the one who is the bishop of our souls, and we trust in him, and we let him lead and guide us in every move and every impact that we strive to make. So as we get ready to close this segment, we're going to come back and dive a little deeper into the chess game and give the listening audience more relative ideas and breakdown of how the game of chess relates to our spiritual lives and our financial lives. We'll see you back in a minute. Yes, welcome back to Closing the Gap Podcast, Truth About Black Wealth. Once again, I am your co-host, Mr. Eddie Richardson, here with our host and owner of Hamilton Wealth Advisors, Mr. Wilbert Hamilton. and you're tuned in to this week's show, which is entitled "This Is Chess, Not Checkers." And we've talked about different aspects of it, from a biblical aspect, spiritual aspect, and really touched on some points about the chess game and what happens economically. But now let's dive a tad bit deeper, all right, and really lay out these different pieces of chess, right? We talked about the chessboard as the economic landscape and the various things that happen there with, with global economy, with you talked about the tariffs, you talked about, government influence, cutbacks, all these different things as part of the chessboard and the economic landscape. So now let's go into the pieces and their financial and spiritual equivalents. Let's first start with the king. What is, in terms of financial, what is the relationship between financial planning and the king on the chessboard?
Well, really, essentially, the king is the financial plan itself.
Okay.
The king is the plan. The king is the overseer, so to speak. And I always tell people, and I tell my clients when they come to my office and I say, well, how do you keep yourself from making bad decisions when it comes to investments? I say, look at it. If you don't have a plan, you shouldn't be making an investment, because your plan should dictate the products that you purchase and put your money into, not the other way around. So the plan keeps you out of trouble. The plan keeps you, balanced. It keeps you organized. It makes sure that you have your goals, short-term and long-term. You have, it makes sure you have your adequate savings and emergency funds, and, make sure you have your expenses covered. You've done your budget analysis and making sure that you're not spending more than you're bringing in. So the king is making sure that we're going to keep the house in order. We're taking into account everything that needs to happen, because as a king, I got to make sure I take care of the last and the least, not just the biggest and the best.
Gotcha. So the king is that standard, right? The core, the center of what we do. And so I will relate that to our relationship with God. God being our king. God needs to be the center of our life, right? It's some of the scriptures that we shared earlier about, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and then all these other things will be added to you. And then also the Proverbs 16:3, where talk about commit your work to the Lord. Like, these types of scriptures remind us that we need to stay focused on God in our ways and let him be the king and the guidance of our life and the basis for everything that we do. And so to our audience, as we talk about chess, how's your relationship with the king, our God? And then also you need to also check your king relationship of, do you have a solid plan laid out for your financial security? Do you have your emergency fund? Do you have your core financial security, your long-term goals, as you stated, right? Have you laid all of these things out? And then you have to protect your king. All right. So, you're going to have some challenges. And that's what we talked about it earlier, that in chess, not only are you playing the game and have a plan, but you also have a challenger. All right. So Will, how do we, protect our king in these challenges?
Well, it's one thing about that. We talked about it on a number of different episodes. And, when I'm building a financial plan, we want to make sure we got a solid foundation. And the foundation of any solid financial plan is making sure you have the right kind of life insurance in place. Because we all hope to live through retirement. We all hope to live, until we decide we want to go on to glory. But life don't always work out that way. Right. God has his own plan. We don't know the day, nor the time, nor the hour that God may call us home. So it's our responsibility to plan for the worst and then hope for the best. So I'm telling the Lord every day, give me 90 happy, healthy, and in my right mind. I'm praying for that, with passion and vigor. That's what I'm asking the Lord for, and that's what I'm working for. But that doesn't mean I have to neglect the planning and preparation that must be done in the event of God decide he has a different plan for my life. So making sure that we have, life insurance, making sure that we have health insurance. As we see, there are a number of cuts that have gone on the federal government has made. And if we haven't made sure that we put ourselves in a financial position and we don't have health insurance, we can have what's called a living death, not a physical death. A physical death is when you no longer have breath in your body. A living death is when you're still here breathing, but you can't afford the care and to get the concern that you need so you can actually enjoy the life that we live in. So those are some of the key things and challenges that we must have to make sure that, because those things can eradicate our financial plan. They can devastate our financial plan. They can take out the king. If we don't have the planning and preparation and making sure we have those protections and policies in place to take care of us.
Gotcha. All right. So that sets us up with the king and give us good understanding what the king is. So now let's move to this queen. And we know that queen, is one of the most powerful pieces in chess. So how does the queen relate to our financial planning?
It's ironic. They always say true power rests behind the throne. And of course, the queen, if you ever noticed on any of those, you look at any of those medieval movies, or you always see the queen, she's standing to the side and a step behind the king. So, that power that rests behind the throne is very near to you. So understanding that the queen is the most versatile and powerful piece on the chessboard because she can move in a number of different directions, up, down, left, right. She can go in any number of ways. And, and how we parallel that to, what is the queen of our lives? That's for most people, that's your job. That's your source of income. That's how you feed your family. That's how you pay your bills. It's how you pay your mortgage. Your investment accounts. What are you investing in? Are you investing in the S&P 500 funds? Are you buying QQQ or any of these other funds that are out there? Are you working with advisors like myself and you have a actively managed investment portfolio and ETFs and stocks and bonds? So these are your liquid, valuable investment assets that you're using to create flexibility and growth for the future. These are the things that are necessary and that you have control over. We don't have control over everything in our life, but we can help control our primary source of income based on the work that we do on a day in, day out basis. And we do control how much of that money we save and invest into the future so we can build and grow and have that stability. So we now have the flexibility and the power to move in whatever direction we would like to go.
Got it. Okay. That queen is powerful, right? You know what I'm saying? So that's their primary income. And I would relate that biblically to, diligence and fruitfulness, meaning that you have to constantly do the work. The queen is already ready to do the work, right? Always ready to bring the income in, right?
Yes.
It's all
Proverbs 31.
Yeah. Proverbs 31, woman able to, rise up early in the morning and make sure everybody has what they need, and never slack, never drawing into poverty, but making sure that the riches and the wealth are always in the household. So, and that's what God honors. God honors the fruits of our labor. God honors our work. God has given us these abilities to do this work because he wants us to bring fruit back to him as well. So that's good how that queen works. And so how do we protect that queen in the midst of policy changes?
Well, constant reviews and analysis, making sure that you have an advisor or, some type of counsel that can help do an analysis and an assessment for you on a continuous basis, because we see things change all the time. We watched inflation be, record highs, and it's come down some, but it's still higher than normal. We've seen, how the market has had its shifts due to the conversations and lack thereof and the adjustments that has taken place from this current administration, if things have changed over. So, making sure that you're properly diversified within your investment portfolio. Are you doing a rebalance and a reset? Are you doing that analysis to make sure that you're in the best places for you economically, from a interest rate standpoint, from a market standpoint? There's always different various factors that go along with how you should be diversified. And we always tell people, proper asset allocation is the greatest driver of consistent performance in a stock market portfolio. It's the right asset allocation, and the right asset allocation is important because we're always having changes. The economy is always moving. Interest rates are always changing. Inflation is adjusting. The real estate market is adjusting. So all these things are always in a constant state of movement. So which means we have to constantly be evaluating and making sure that we're adapting our skills to what's going on right now, not sitting still talking about what was.
That's good. That's good. All right. So that gives us that challenge. So now let's move to another piece on the chessboard, right? The rooks. So how do the rooks relate to our financial plan?
The rooks are those are the items that we probably have a little less control over.
Okay.
I call them, big but slow. Those are the elephants or the whales. So you hear people in business always talking about I'm whale hunting. Whale hunting, where you're chasing that whale because if you can kill that whale, you can eat for a long period of time.
Okay.
But in order to catch a whale, it takes so much more energy and effort. So the rooks are your real estate investments, or your illiquid investments into businesses, and your long-term holdings that you have where you've invested into a particular business or opportunity and you're waiting for that payoff. You don't know when it's going to pay off. You don't know where. You don't know how. You're just hoping that it does at some particular point in time in the future. And of course, real estate is a great tool and a great investment vehicle, but you don't control when somebody else buys that real estate from you. So you're always in a state of waiting because it takes two to tango. So it's not just singularly on you. We can't just sell the real estate when we're ready for the price that we want to sell it for. There's always someone that's looking to buy, but they're looking to buy at their price. So there's some negotiation that has to happen. So because those things are more illiquid and a lot more time sensitive from the standpoint that we have less control, those are the rooks. So they can be, great because they provide, strong defense because they're valuable assets that we can use from a net worth perspective.
Okay.
But they're not always providing consistent liquidity when we need it or how we need it.
Okay, that's good. That's good. So rooks only can move in a straight line, and like you said, they slow, but they can grow, and they're usually steady, right? And we need them in our financial plans to give us some versatility. But I would relate the rooks to somewhat of how people say you need 7 streams of income, right? These are in a stream. A stream usually runs in a straight line, right? And so that's kind of those rooks. It just stays in line. It's constantly just steady, like you said, builds up that momentum, has much value, but, doesn't have as much versatility in it, right? So how do we protect our rooks in the midst of challenging policies that may come on the board, on our economic board?
So it's really, we have to depend on our queen in a lot of ways, because if you mismanage your current liquidity and income, then that can put your rook in jeopardy because they're a lot more interest rate sensitive. They're a lot more, they're a lot more environment sensitive, not just due to how we feel, but how the world feels. There's things from a government policy perspective when it comes to zoning. I can tell you right now, I have clients that are in a certain city, in Memphis, Tennessee, I can tell you that have a large piece of real estate they're looking to sell. And the only thing that has it on hold is a government policy, and they're waiting for a city council board meeting to approve a zoning restriction. And that will close them a multi-million-dollar real estate deal. This deal has been on hold for probably almost a year because they're trying to wait, and they have to finalize a zoning issue. So those are your rooks. They're great pieces that move in one direction, but they're usually unilateral, and they can't move forward until something else gives them the ability to move forward.
Got it. All right, that's the rook. So how about this bishop? to see what I'm saying. Now I'm striving to be a bishop in the word, but what about bishop on this board? What is
Bishops are a little bit unique, and you have to understand the pros and cons that come with bishops. Bishops are a lot like our specialized investment accounts. Those are our tax advantage. Those are retirement accounts, the 401ks, the 403bs, the 457s, the IRAs, and you have to understand them and how to utilize them because they're very sensitive to the tax environment. And because that can change, we've seen it change. And with this big, beautiful bill, so to speak, that's just been implemented. And just think about the type of debt that is going to be created supposedly from this particular bill. Well, we understand in the United States of America, when deficit goes up, who pays for that deficit? Well, the American people have to pay the cost of this deficit. Well, how does the United States of America collect on that debt? It's through the utilization of taxes. So understanding how to utilize those specialized accounts and tax advantage accounts, the 401ks and IRAs, is you have to understand that guess what? You're going to get a tax break coming in, but you got to understand how things are going to affect you on the other way out. So we want to take advantage of them because guess what? We don't want to overpay on our taxes on a year-to-year basis. It gives us a way to save. It gives us a way to save pre-tax, lower our tax base, put us in a position where we can now have something on autopilot for retirement. And it helps us because a lot of our individuals and a lot of people in our community, unfortunately, are not disciplined enough. After the money hits their hand, it gives them the ability to save before they get it. So by being pre-tax and it coming out before they get their check, a lot of people are more likely to take advantage of those plans and stick with them because it's on autopilot. Because we've seen if we're in control, we're more likely to make mistakes and not hold ourselves accountable for how we utilize those assets. So understanding from a bishop perspective, there are a lot of pros and cons, to bishops, but it's all how you manage them. It's all how you handle them. You can manage the taxes on the back end, but you don't want to ignore that there are some tax liabilities on the back end.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's good. So you gave us that layout, and then also I think that I would say that those are the challenges, right? It's understanding that how the tax structure works, how to leverage those things, paying. And this is why you need a professional, because as you stated, the so-called big, beautiful bill may have some things in there that address this, but how many of us are going to sit down and be able to read and understand all pages of it? So you need to have a professional that is trained and understands these bills so that they can teach us, lead us, guide us in how these things will affect us going forward. So let's move to the next one. Let's move to the next piece. And the next piece, let's talk about the Knights. How the Knights are unique to their movement on the chessboard, right? They said that they can move in an L shape. So how does this apply to our financial planning?
It's really ironic that it can move in the L-shaped direction, and Knights can represent a number of different assets, I would say. On one hand, it represents the power of diversification. And on the other hand, it can represent what we call alternative investments. And they're alternative for a reason, because everybody doesn't need and can't absorb the volatility that comes along with being in alternative investments. See, and in my world, there's a thing called accredited investors. You need to make a certain amount of money to be able to take on a certain amount of risk. And all too often in life, that Knight puts himself in harm's way. And not all the time on his own doing. Sometimes I'm here just strictly taking up for somebody else. So you have to be careful, with the Knight, because guess what? Being overly diversified can put you in a situation where you actually minimize your gains and your growth. You want to understand where to be and be properly diversified due to proper asset allocation. And then understanding alternative investments are very specific. Those are much more what we call speculative in nature. The returns are not as consistent. So understanding the good and the bad of those. So I always say there's no such thing as a bad investment. It just may be the wrong investment for you based on where you are at this particular point in time in life.
Got you. So we looked at the night. So let's close out with the last piece, which is the pawns, right? How do the pawns affect what's the relationship for them and our financial plan?
The pawns represent us and how we operate usually on the day-to-day world. You know, we look at those Starbucks runs, and we look at those DoorDashes, and we look at those Uber Eats bills, and we look at, you know, the miscellaneous spending we're doing, buying all the new Jordans and the new clothes and shoes, and all those things. Those are the pawns because they seem meaningless and weak.
Yeah.
But if you were to actually utilize them and put them together and made a consistent effort out of them, what would that actually turn into? And I guarantee you, what we see as pawns could actually turn into the very thing that becomes our queen and saves our life.
Wow.
See you next time.
That's good.